Doop 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 doo. Hello, we're
Hello.
live. What's up, y'all? How's it going? Tony, Ethan,
Oh,
Tony.
warm.
Okay. Yeah. I think it doesn't really matter where you are in the country right now. It's just really hot.
Swear it.
Really
What is
hot.
it? It's warm. It's now and for the rest of our lives. Do, do,
Um,
do.
I think we can probably show Ethan's screen for this, just so it's all on one thing.
Yeah, let me see what I can do here. Okay, I'm gonna share a screen.
So
Share
today, maybe
screen.
before we go live, can maybe you could say a little, Tony, about because I think you'd proposed this program Magma, which I don't know. So maybe it'd be helpful if other folks are watching this. And since you and Ethan are professional artists and do game art, have you? It seems like a test, right? Like Magma is a new thing.
Yeah, I haven't used it before. There's
Oh,
a
here it is.
podcast, YouTube thing that I listen to watch called Artist Block, and they do they mostly do like animator interviews, but they talk like all kinds of different art trades and practices and kind of industry insider stuff. Super cool. Artist Block on YouTube. You kind of have to dig for it. Just SEO isn't great on it, but great conversations, cool people. But they use this program called Magma, or a website rather. So it's all hosted on the cloud or some some kind of fictitious way of explaining it. Um, where me and Ethan can draw on the same like Photoshop file essentially. So it has like layers and brushes and all kinds of fancy stuff that lets us doodle in real time with the power of technology.
At long last, someone has invented a large sheet of paper. Very excited about it.
So far, the only
Cool.
thing I'm not enjoying is I usually have my eraser assigned to a specific keyboard shortcut, and it is not acting the same way that I would like for it to.
Uh, yeah, this is it's so interesting when you start thinking about like the particularities of programs and like muscle memory, especially for me,
Mm-hmm.
is always this interesting thing. Like I use a bunch of different programs, but I started using Photoshop when I was 14, so it's like I don't ever need to think about it. And the terrifying thing about is that I'm still learning stuff about it, which it's a program that's trying to be all things to all people. And ever since they instituted AI, like whatever token, blah blah blah, I've been very reluctant to update to 2025, and sooner or later that's going to be a
Yep.
problem. So, ugh.
I think I'm still using 2024 for some specific feature or thing that they changed that I couldn't stand the thought of. So I said, you know what, I will just wait. I will wait for a couple
Wait.
years. And
Yeah,
there's
they
not like there's a
really
bunch of new features that I desperately need that aren't just AI integration for everything everywhere.
got to make that number go up. Got to go up. I mean, speaking of SEO, thanks to Google's more recent changes after they've decided that the Don't Be Evil was just like a fun little suggestion, everybody's SEO now sucks. Like the past year has been this absolute bloodbath of smaller web companies and smaller marketing teams and online presses and websites and all that stuff. They've changed their SEO completely so that they can just like basically hoover up everybody's data and like create AI stuff with it. So, you know, Magma, if you're listening to this, you're in good company. Everybody's SEO sucks right now.
Yeah.
Monstrous thing. Look at this. I think it's really fun. I feel like we've kind of hilariously on this sheet, like we've kind of swapped places for a minute. Like I'm doing this like really grindy, weird like graffiti monster.
Yeah, I'm mostly done with, or I'm done with the artwork for the one pilot episode of BC that'll be, coming out at least in PDF form relatively soon. But the next one kind of features a raccoon character that I want to start getting some illustrations
Yeah.
together for.
And so that is going to be one of the playable characters or an NPC.
Yeah, it'll be an NPC. I just was looking back through the Google Doc for it. It'll be somewhere towards the end. Um, so I'm just trying to figure out, I guess probably in the wrong direction, figure out the artwork first, and then I'll go do layout, which is my own personal curse that I keep running into over and over and over again. But I spent most of this past week/weekend like relearning how to do layout stuff. Like I haven't.
Do you mean in InDesign or basic
Like,
compositional principles, or?
well, both, both, but mainly
Yeah, that's always
in,
fun.
in InDesign specifically, like learning where the buttons actually are. Like I don't have to brute force everything. So like when I laid out Blister Critters, it was kind of like the first book of that scale and that size that I had ever laid out. And so I didn't know that either the buttons existed, or if I did know they existed, I was just too stubborn to like learn how to use them.
Yeah.
And so now that with a lot of the other games that I'm working on, including SK coming up, where my sole job will be layout and like doing the InDesign file, like maybe I should figure out what these buttons do and where to put them and where everything.
InDesign, my old nemesis.
Yeah, but it's been a cool
Yeah.
like new tool set, I guess, to put together.
Yeah, it is sort of interesting to me. It's like, it's Adobe specifically, just in terms of like muscle memory and corporate blah blah blah, like for reasons beyond my understanding internally, like the development of InDesign and Illustrator and Photoshop all happened non-concurrently and like on different strategies. So a lot of the stuff between them is not compatible, and Photoshop became this incredibly, one might say bloated, but I've always said like, wow, look at all these amazing bells and whistles. To the point where you wind up running so many things out of Photoshop, and then you discover like, oh yeah, there's a lot more to this suite. And then it's like, wait, why are the hotkeys different? They're the same company. I don't understand. I hate all of you.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like I definitely for a long time, I just did everything through Photoshop. Like I think probably most like illustrators do. And then they're like, wait, there's a whole program dedicated to the thing I'm trying to make Photoshop do very, very poorly. Which to some extent makes sense, right? Like that's not what the program's designed for. But then there's times where I'm like, okay, but like obviously you can make this work better, even if it's like a not as feature rich way to do it. You have, I don't know, they're like one of the wealthiest companies. Isn't Adobe's like one of the wealthiest companies? They can make it work. It's not.
And then they're just like,
there's clearly other art programs that do it, so it's not impossible. Like it does function if you do it right.
And like, but why spend the time and the effort and money making things accessible and cross-compatible for your users when you can make number go up by constantly like coming up with new bizarro business strategies, like, and then having the federal government go after you for your, monopolistic practices and your lock-in for, like the amount of money that they charge you if you try and cancel early is. To the point where it's like the Biden administration, like the FDA went after them. Well, not the FDA, the FTC.
Yeah, that was one of the cool things where I was like, all right, cool. Yeah, I forget what the specific name was for it, but like you should just be able to one-click cancel stuff, or just not all the they were calling them like specifically like junk fees or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, well,
guess what got rolled back in the new administration?
Exactly. That's one of those things where I'm like, there is not like a benevolent person alive that can convince me that those are good things. Like you have to be an evil person. You have to be like the bad guy in a movie to be like, no, we need these. These are good.
We need. Yeah, you're the person trying to take care. Like you're going to destroy the summer camp and replace it with like a munitions factory, and so all the kids have got to rally together to save Camp Petrola on the Lake Petrolia. How do I change the size on this thing? Stabilizers, opacity, flow, blah blah blah.
Yeah, I've decided to join you in the monster drawing game.
Just couldn't help myself. I think part of it is like and that's another interesting thing with these programs is I think that for the most part, most of them have gotten to the point where their brushes are getting more compatible across product, but not always. And some of them have benefits and some of them have drawbacks. Like on Clip Studio Paint, it's like one of its killer features is that you can convert line styles after making them. It sort of treats, it doesn't necessarily have such a hard line between vector and raster when you're drawing, so you can change line widths. But there are certain pressure changes that like, Photoshop hired some of the people who had been making them and brought them in-house and, really made incredible brushes that perfectly mimic different like gradations of pencil, which I've been reliant on for quite some time. And I think that's partly just because it's like my background in art is mostly in quotes traditional. So I was always looking for stuff that like more closely mimicked materials that I've already used and textures that I'm already familiar with, which then I think over time you start realizing like, wait a minute, this thing can like digital can do a lot more than that. So you wind up having to go back and be like, hold the phone. Like I could do things I could never possibly do on a piece of paper. And that's been an interesting couple of years, sort of like learning all of that stuff.
So can you all say a little about what you're drawing today? Choices, thoughts.
Yeah. So Wythe and I were just having a discussion about cards and sort of allocating team interest and locations and figures and people. And I like my favorite thing in the whole world is what if place person. So I'm thinking about some kind of old school video game style, which is nice because in terms of SK, like it very much dovetails with like that sort of like very flat representation of like flat land of people moving across the platform or whatever is very much in line with like, straight up medieval inclinations on a page. So I started making kind of a really grody monster, like I guess it's on some kind of like brick wall, something that would be like both a marginalia and then maybe something that you would also actually encounter in a game. That's what I'm working on.
I was beginning to work on some NPCs for the Backside of Water, the next pilot episode that we'd be working on. But then Ethan was drawing monsters, and now I want to draw monsters.
Just so funny because I started drawing monsters because you started drawing. Period. I was like, ooh, Tony's here, monsters. I'm gonna draw a monster. I think also because for these drawing time sessions, typically I've been drawing SK bestiary stuff to sort of knock stuff off of the list.
Yeah, it makes sense to draw stuff that at some point we're gonna use. I mean, we've kind of talked about that in the past, but sometimes it's nice to draw, freely, like whatever's on your mind, and then figure out, okay, we'll put that in a book, right? So there's sort of different ways to approach like drawing time. It does look like the canvas is kind of filling up. Is this something where like you would just create new artboards? It looks like at the bottom left. I've never used Magma, so I'm asking as someone who's naive to the program.
I think we can. We can also just, I think, turn the layer off and then just start doing another one.
Oh, touche. Yeah,
cool.
That makes sense.
I propose that we fill this space up completely before we move on to the next one.
Ethan, I would think that you could probably even zoom in a little bit.
Yeah, I think so.
On your end.
Although,
can you? Yeah, I think my. There we go. Is that a little? Oh God.
Yep, too much. Far too much.
Oh, it's a square. How about that? I didn't know that. Where is the?
Oh, I was so zoomed in. I didn't know it was a square either. Oh, well, we have a whole second half to freaking mess with.
Whole new world to explore. I am looking for. Speaking of non-obvious things, I am looking for if there is a page move. This would be the hand symbol in something like Photoshop, but they're pretty universal.
The hotkey is a space bar.
Jedi.
So maybe, I think I would zoom in, Ethan, on what a bit so we can see a little closer because it's kind of zoomed out. So it's there you go.
Okay.
Perfect. Oh,
the zoom has got a really heavy.
Yeah.
It's like a lead zoom foot. Okay.
There you go. Perfect.
A little bit.
No.
This is not.
So, point number one to learn about Magma: the zoom is not easy to use. There you go.
Yeah, or I don't know if it's because I'm using a smart mouse, so it's like taking it as like it's not mapped onto the blah blah with the blah 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 that Mac mouses usually have.
So Ethan, the sort of like annotatio, like Florilegium, whatever, weird scriptorium monster that you're drawing. What is it? It's like a well with a plant thing.
It's a good question. I started drawing shapes. I was originally thinking about like a paper monster, and then I'm like, nah, that's not really what I'm feeling right now because I'm just like defaulting to like biota. So I think this monster, I'm sort of wondering. So if I were to like hypothetically adapt this to SK, this is not really mapped onto anything in the bestiary. It would either be something that you encounter like in a book, like if you are inside a page for some reason, or the world has somehow in some picaresque way turned into a page, like this would be. I think in the Questing Network live play podcast, I think at one point Erica's character Bessemer used one of the powers called Brain Candle and went inside a living book, or like went inside the mind of these creatures that were coming out of a book. And so everything was made out of like manuscript paper in this weird sort of underwater kind of way. So maybe it's something like that. Alternatively, it's just a really crazy trash monster.
We love an Oscar the Trash Monster in a medieval setting, right?
In a medieval, yeah.
Maybe immediately post-medieval, or sort of confused as to how time and space work.
Yeah.
And Tony, you're drawing a beast that could be a raccoon, that could be in backside water, but it could also just be like a raccoon beast or something, or pig. Looks like there's a couple beasts kind of merged.
Yeah, I'm just kind of free drawing and doodling around while we're yapping.
Well, we love that. How are the brushes? Anything, or I guess, as professionals who are using, Photoshop, Procreate, maybe other programs, I don't know, but how does this program compare? And this is free, right? So this is like a free web version of something similar to like a Procreate. How do you find, all the options? Do you feel like, it's not as good, or like, oh, this is great? You could imagine like literally someone using this to do work.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Ethan.
I feel like the brush tracking is excellent. I feel like it's, again, some of the at this point, sort of like, I feel like some of them are pretty basic, but then I'm always sort of like doing stuff that's very textural. So I feel like my needs are pretty specific with this kind of stuff. Were I a ruthless corporation making something like this, or a startup, I would presumably start selling brush packs, which you could acquire in program if you did the paid beta or something. I wonder if that's eventually going to be the goal with something like this.
When I was clicking through stuff, I think there is like a premium option for something. I think there's on the site here, it says premium options. So it looks like there's even like a free, or not premium, advanced options. So it looks like there is some amount of like fancy brush settings you could mess with if you wanted to spend the time like learning how their specific brush engine worked.
Interesting.
But I mean, so far I think I agree with Ethan that they're like relatively like basic or simple, but also I don't think this program is supposed to be like a replacement for your like Procreate or Clip Studio or Photoshop. I think it is meant to do what we're doing, where you're kind of just hanging out and doodling together and like able to like share a screen. It's probably good for like brainstorming if you have like a larger like team of folks that are all doodling or sketching, storyboarding kind of at the same time.
It's almost like Miro, but like for drawing.
Yeah.
Miro you wouldn't draw in, but yeah, that makes sense. I could see that.
Yeah, but like it has a lot of the tools. So that there's other online programs that are just kind of like doodle on a whiteboard. This one is definitely skewed towards artists and people that are familiar with art programs, where I think other ones are more for just like any person who wants to doodle on a whiteboard in the internet, in the interwebs.
Right.
But I think this one specifically was probably built by somebody and for people that like have a familiarity with like Photoshop or Procreate, that want those better brushes and better tools.
It's really interesting to me. I think overall, like online, or just like I have found with personal experience that like nothing sort of illustrates the difference between like, I think like programmer and like product developer mindset and like civilian or just user mindset than programs like mind maps or things like this, because you wind up finding out all of these bizarre strictures because they have to be built in to like let the program do whatever it needs to do. So you end up with like sometimes like truly baffling or bizarre limitations on just like being able to move something around, or it's like, oh, I would like to like move files around and have them like look at a thing, and then you can link to it, and then I can go to the thing. And it like almost no programs do that, because it's either so advanced or it's such in a different mindset from, exactly to your point, like, oh, well, this is designed mostly for like, the very specific corporate use cases that actually make us money. Just being able to sit down and do a thing is often like bafflingly difficult with stuff like this. So I am impressed by the ease of use on this, because it's like, man, not even Adobe does stuff like this well. There was a share and like comment function built into Photoshop and a bunch of other stuff, and it like it does not work very well. There's hella lag on it, and this has no lag to the best of my like experience.
Me and Ethan
now.
were just saying, like, it's kind of crazy that some stuff doesn't just work from Adobe. Like one of the wealthiest companies in the space, the premier only one to use, as they would put it. I mean, there's plenty of other alternatives.
The mandatory one if you are a design studio working in any concept or artistic field.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, they more or less have, currently, a monopoly, and we'll see if in the future if they're newer companies that have that energy of like, hey, we make a thing that's basically the same, but we've upgraded it because it's now 2025 and not 1990. But yeah, I mean, they've also just spent all their, I think, upgrade time and money, it seems like, on the AI functionality, which I will say I tried to use the other day at my day job, and it was like laughably bad. Like, it was so much worse than the alternatives. And it's not like something I endorse anyway, as much as like, oh, let me test it, right? I have free access, so like, let me just see what it does. And it was like, this is like redonkulous. Like, I just thought it would be better because of what you guys are saying. It's like, oh, Adobe's like Premiere, like we use it for everything, so it must be pretty good if they spent all their money on this finally, and they've been pushing it, and then it just couldn't really do anything. I was like, what did you spend your money on, guys? Like, why didn't you just like keep the products?
Well, here's the thing, to like in terms of their mindset, in terms of what they did to keep it in quotes like ethical, they trained it on their stock footage database and public domain sites. It's obviously like, here's the problem with that. One, in the original contract, it was not specified that was something that it could do. Two, in terms of were monopolistic, like legal sort of issues actually enforced and addressed in this country. Training something on people and then using it directly as a competitor with them is super flamingly illegal. Even if you sort of, in quotes, like, can argue that somehow their past, like, terms of use also somehow magically include something that has just been invented a few years ago. And thirdly, like, the really good LLM stuff that like does image generation is trained on like data sets with billions of data. Like, they're just scraping the web. The reason that they're good is because they're just scraping everything. Fun fact, I did check the database. Wythe, your and I's publication Beyond You has been stolen in the Facebook database for training its large language model. So we're glad that we were right about everything.
A PowerPoint about how all this is going to be much shittier that we did before COVID. Now
before COVID,
to make all of these things much shittier. So,
it's very like, well, something about parasitism now being used inside a thing. It's like, well, you don't understand how much that's going to destroy it from the inside. Our presentation was sentient. It's going to be eating away at the stomach lining of the LLM for the next unknown number of decades and slowly destroy it as it lays its eggs on the inside. So
you've Cronenberged your own software.
You did it. You Cronenberged it. You Cronenberged it.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if there are other, if other folks, there's like the return to analog and human made, which we like to think we're part of to some degree, but I know a lot of our work we do use Adobe. We just don't use Firefly or anything that does generative AI, and
because it's terrible.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if there's more and more sort of space in like these different kinds of design realms, or if like effectively, there's just like a newer company, or Adobe just fires some people, hires some people, and like keeps going. I mean, I guess any of it is possible. But yeah, it does feel like that. To y'all's point, it feels like they missed some opportunities to make their products. Like, I have to use Acrobat all day at work, and it crashes a lot. And I'm just like, why is a program that is just for reading text and me commenting on text crashing? You know what I mean? Like, we can send people to other planets. We can do generative AI or something. Can't you just have a way for me to mark up a PDF that doesn't crash? And the answer is apparently no. So
no.
Open space, programmer friends.
Everyone, if you want to make a drawing program that can also for some reason annotate a PDF, you will make, I believe, $20 billion. That's my educated guess.
Market predictions from Ethan Gouldini.
Yeah, there you go. Buy high, sell low.
Nailed it. Cool. Well, this seems like a fun program from the outside. Watching you all become very colorful all of a sudden. I feel like sometimes these live drawings were not as colorful, and now we're hardcore coloring.
What's nice about it is that, like, because it's layer effects, I think we're sort of like unconsciously creating a workflow. So it's like you can do flatting on a drawing that's already done somewhere other. Like, I don't want to draw my little concrete brick monster anymore. I'm going to go do coloration on Tony's cool ass monster, and it's really fast because we both have I guess our domains in this program are on separate layers. So all I had to do was move one of the layers down, and suddenly I can do a traditional workflow flattening layer.
We can even work on it together, like at the same time. Like I could be doing the line work while you're coloring it. It's funny.
I had always dreamed that someday, like a premium product would get to this point. There was a point in time where I was all in when they were developing an iPad version of Photoshop. And I'm like, oh, this is really great. This is what the cloud was designed for, like being able to go somewhere and do things. And they completely like shat the bed on it. It's like they eventually deprecated the product. It just never worked out. They've completely stopped. They got so interested in AI. They have stopped even, I think, working on like the portable version of Photoshop. And then Procreate came along and completely ate their lunch. And Procreate is a really great program. It's super intuitive. It's really fun to use. It's got some limitations to it, but if you just want to like draw on the go, I would love if Procreate, for instance, like adapted or like wound up having some sort of online portal like this. I think it would be an absolute killer feature.
Yeah, no, I agree. Procreate is fun as a non-professional drawer. It's really easy and intuitive. And I found on an iPad with Procreate, you can really get your sketch on in a way that feels to me, again, as a non-professional, more like a notebook and pen and paper, which I do enjoy. Whereas Photoshop, and I see y'all and my lovely wife, Gay, another artist designer on our team, using the pens, and I like the pens with the Wacom tablets with Photoshop. Like, it's a whole nother level that for me has always felt really counterintuitive and finicky. I felt like Procreate was like a prosumer product that was like super well designed. So that kind of like was amazing to me, that there was something beyond Photoshop that was appealing to sort of broad audiences for sketching. Also, we see Taylor in the chat. Hey, what's up, Taylor? And Ian was in the chat earlier. What's up, Ian? Let us know if you have questions. I used to do all
my Blister Critters stuff in Procreate, my iPad. I think maybe we talked about this last time. Maybe I was talking about it with Chris, but my iPad or the pencil just gave out or something. So I've had to like adapt to drawing Blister Critters on my tablet or on my Mac now, and it just doesn't feel the same. Like there's just a different surface. The pencil in the hand feels different, but also like program to program drawing will feel different. They're either like it can be like 5% more responsive, and it'll make the drawing or painting experience feel slightly different. Like Photoshop for me is always like kind of laggy. Like no matter what I'm doing with it, like the pencil to paper like response time is always just lower than if I use basically anything else, which is kind of crazy, but it is just the slowest way to draw. And so on my iPad, it's instant. Like with Procreate, I mean, like it's instant. Like it feels like I'm drawing it in real time, because I should be, because it's 2025 and like we have the technology.
We have the means, we have the technology, but market share. I feel like I spent an inordinate amount of time during these drawing time sessions just grousing about like tech monopolies. Like
it's half
outside
the
of
job.
maybe the scope of it's just like well, you wanted us to use these things, so we're going to complain about them. Brand ambassadors we are not. Maybe we should stop complaining about Adobe and try and get some brand ambassador money. Yeah, well, so I take everything back, and they're amazing.
It's also possible that this could be like kind of a review show. It's definitely not. I mean, this was initially just like a chill, like, hey, we have to do art anyway. What if we did it on air? And then maybe people will learn a little thing or two if they want, because y'all do this a lot and have interesting thoughts. But, it could be cool to do some level of like, we're checking out a new thing intentionally and talking through it. In which case, maybe we'd be a little pointed around, like, we'll do this, then this, that, like try each feature. But I think people get a sense of Magma from watching this, half hour or so. That's totally fair. I think it's fine to grasp about giant tech monopolies as long as, they're, if we wanted their money, that would be different. But seems like we're probably
so just say that. Wythe, just say the word. If we need to change our tune, I will. I'll start showing up with the hat and the swag.
As soon as the email comes in, let us know.
We will.
I remember having it's very like distinct in my mind. I had this argument with my best friend's parents when I was like 14 or 15. I was super, super young, and we were super close, like me and their family. But I don't know what spurred it on, but I was like in this argument with them, and I remember saying, it's not verbatim, but basically these words where I was like, I would never take money for my artwork. That would just sour the whole thing. It'd be disgusting. And they just kind of looked at me like I was crazy. I'm like, all right, kid. And then here I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little over a
Well,
decade
I
later.
mean, I will say like that. So I was just thinking about that as you were saying that. You know, it's not to say that like, you know, I can shit on big companies whose products I use. I can bite the hand that you know, if not feeds me, at least prepares the plates that I use, like all the live long day, because they suck. But at the same time, you know, it's not like like artist community or like localized art communities or analog traditions are much better. Sometimes I feel like when digital started happening, like I remember I got like a lot of crap like when I started using Photoshop like young, to the point where it was like there was like one art teacher in school who like was a true believer in the technology and encouraged me. And then like everybody else is like, why are you using that? And I'm like, looking back on it, it's like, well, I didn't know this at the time. It's partly because I have attention deficit disorder and finishing a piece is really hard. And if it's a file and I can roll it back a little bit, that kind of makes a huge difference.
Just keep working
But
on
like,
it. Yeah.
just keep working on it. But like, it took me a long time to figure that part out. But like, I remember like ancient, God, I'm so old. It's unbelievable. Like deviant art and like that sort of period of time when there was so much energy around making art, and like the community came up with these absolutely idiotic ideas about like using references cheating. Like that was a bit like you can't use like, and I was like, I remembered like it actually really set me back for like a non-zero amount of time, because you're young and you're like an internet adopter, you're online, you're in these spaces, you want like to like be part of a community, impress other people, and like you start hearing that like, well, using reference is bad, you should just be doing it out of your head. Well, it's like, well, I don't have a functioning working memory, I can't actually do that. Like now I can do stuff without reference because I've spent God knows how many years like brute forcing learning how to do it. But like, you should always use reference if you feel like using it. Who cares? That's idiotic. If you look at the entire sum of art history, every artist has been using, you know, cartoons, cutouts, like panels, like studies, like camera obscuras, like that stuff is like, it was just like this, it just became this like zeitgeist and this sort of like dogma that made absolutely no sense. So it's not like artists working on their own can't also come to terrible conclusions outside of a company.
No, for sure. I think it's like a side effect. Like that way of thinking is just like a side effect of almost the, I don't know, some of the other like internet habits that people develop at large, where it's really easy for people to see a piece of digital art be made in a span of like 30 seconds. So you don't necessarily see the process or what the artist was researching prior. Like if you just get to see the kind of final end result, you really are just stuck with thinking, there's no way they use reference. Look, it only took them 2 hours. The time lapse was so fast.
Right.
And it's like,
as
well,
opposed to like the
no.
10 studies I did ahead of time. Yeah.
Exactly. Like you can only share and show so much, but I do think that a lot of that is lost in the process, and for the worse. Not like in a way that's cool, in a way where it's like, I don't know. Even in the way that like I just discovered there's a bunch of buttons in InDesign. I think there is just like this that I'm super guilty of just like, no, it's easy. It should be easy, and when it's not easy, that you're doing it wrong. It's like, no, some of the stuff is just hard or requires a certain amount of like time that's actually put into it.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, it's
I
interesting
agree.
to hear. Yeah, what is sort of viewed as like allowed or not allowed changes. This is like a little diversion, but I'm reading about the history of medieval France for the book I'm writing for Danse Macabre, and I just got to the chapter on the definitive 1922 book Medieval France, edited by Arthur Tilley, that was like the guide to French studies for a long time, which is really fun to read because it is written in that like almost like catty infighting like voice of like British academic from before World War II, like during the height of empire. But it's very good anyway for some of these like contextual like life, like what was daily life like, right, in the 1300s in France. And I got to the chapter on industry, and they're talking about, you know, really, it's not industry by modern standards, it's artisanal craft workshops, groups of workshops that are called corporations, and that later form up guilds, and the guilds are like basically effective oligopolies. And they really stratify instantly, where the masters, you know, the people with, basically we would call them capitalists, with the means of production, become they become her hereditary caste. So that you can only become a master if you're the son or son-in-law of a master, and then everyone else are called the men. So now we call them journeymen, but at the time they were just the men, l'homme, or whatever. But it's funny because a lot of it became very, the workmanship actually decreased in quality due to this, for not just like economic reasons, but because they became very rigid in the bylaws about what could be used. Like you could only use, like you had to use a certain amount, and sometimes now looking back it's like too much. Like you had to use 4 pounds of lard to make a certain dye for like one shirt, and like even if you discovered a better way that didn't need as much, you had to use 4 pounds, or else you could be fined like basically $20 or something, like, you know. So it's like this whole thing where over time the guys who own the tools forget, like they're not actually any good at it, they've never really done it, they're just the fail sons, and they start sort of writing out these insane like lists of like everything you have to do if you are the actual artist. And there's things that are disallowed or you have to do that are not best practice. They're just like, well, that's how we did it literally 100 years ago when great grandpa was alive or whatever. And so even though like history is progressing, like industry sort of stopped progressing in France and Flanders for a while because of this. And so it's like this case study of kind of these weird things where norms around art and like, you know what I mean, like norms around like, well, this is just how we do it, like this is how this program works or whatever, change the outcome.
Yeah.
Like they change the thing itself. And
meanwhile, some guild masters, like, you know, brothers, like secondhand lard business is doing great. Like,
yeah, exactly. You know, exactly. And you realize it's kind of like the thing in 30 Rock where like they're really there to sell microwaves and toasters for Sony or whatever. It's like that's what happened. Is in Flanders it became about, well, we're here to like sell like, I you know, forget what it is, but yeah, basically like the inputs, and it really doesn't matter if the clothes are any good. Like who cares? Like the point shifted from like we are artisans and we do craft and we build the best like tables and chairs and medieval stuff, candles, whatever it is, coopers making barrels. It just started to be like, no, we're capitalists, we the owners of the corporations, the guilds, the guild masters, and like we just care that you're using the right amount of lard that we're selling you because you had to buy it for, you know. So there's a whole like pyramid scheme. Anyway, but it just made me think of that, like how sort of arbitrary cultural, you know, arbitrary and non-arbitrary cultural decisions can mean that art becomes not as good. And as someone learning it and in the flow of time, yeah, you're like, wait, why am I doing it this way? Screw this isn't great. So I love hearing of how y'all like threw off the shackles or whatever. And Tony,
yeah.
I'm glad you sell your art from Honey because your art's really good. And unfortunately,
Yeah.
money-based system. So
no, it's I saw them recently for actually that friend's wedding. I saw the parents again, and I brought it up, and they were like, "I don't remember that at all." I'm like, "Well, it's stuck in my mind that we had that conversation." And I think about it occasionally now, where I'm like, "Man, what an idiot I would be if I had stuck to that."
Yeah.
Like it's, you know, it's a pure thought as a 14-year-old, and now I think I would, you know, I'd find some other job, but this is definitely better than whatever else I'd be doing. So.
I think what's even challenging about it is that they're like, and this is like, if you're young and listening to this, it's almost impossible to wrap your head around. Like there was like in the 90s, especially, there was a really strong culture of malingering socialism and communism that like the idea, like I don't think that this idea of selling out even exists anymore, but this idea that you were doing something outside of the craft of making something just, and like, of course, people exploited it all to get out, but like musicians would like, once like MP3s came around, they would like, if they got into a conflict with their company, they would just release the music for free, or like they would like, we don't want to be successful, that's insane, we just want to make music, you know. But that was back when, you know, rent was $200, so they could do shit like that. And it's like, can you, like, just trying to imagine to explaining to young people to like once upon a time, like disengaging was a possibility. Like, well, it was a viable philosophy to even like consider, as opposed to like, wow, like you're going to be turned into glue and given to the robot factory.
Well, also I think you're like, yeah, there's ways that you can say, hey, I make enough money that I can on the side be an artist, and that'll be fulfilling. But I think, you know, increasingly, and that, you know, during the height of U.S. empire, not everyone obviously benefited from this, but there was sort of a robust middle class where people could sort of do that, and so, you know, you could not necessarily be you know, David Byrne, but you could have a band with your buddies on the weekend or whatever, and it's fine. But nowadays it's like it feels like no one is making enough money just to live. So it sort of throws all that into relief, where it's like, well, if I'm going to be fucked either way, I might as well do the thing I want, you know, or I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like it reframes it a bit. So it's less that drive of like, I guess I should get a day job, and on the weekends I'll try to do my fun thing. It's like, wait, well, the thing I'm doing all week sucks, so let me just like try to do the fun thing all the time and see what happens. So I can, because people are constantly, I don't know if you guys have heard this, constantly I hear about how all American teens want to be professional influencers. And I'm like, yeah, we can make fun of the youth all you want, but that isn't what that means. What that means is they don't see a path forward like they don't see anything viable. So they're just like, what's fun? I don't know, I like watching weird stuff on YouTube. I guess I'll do that. Because they don't see a point in like, I'll work at a job that AI will replace in 6 months anyway. You know what I mean? Like, I'll work hard on a degree, be in debt, and then get fired in 6 months anyway. So like, what, you're right, exactly. Why would you do that? Just watch YouTube, you know? So I feel like it's like an inflection point, at least in again, the global north or whatever, where like being an artist no longer means what it did for I think the last couple generations, where like, you know, most people did have day jobs, and being an artist meant a thing you kind of did on the weekends or at night. And yeah, whether you sold it or gave it away to some degree probably was more about, cultural purity test stuff. And I would imagine it was really less about like how good the art was, if that makes sense. That's a hypothesis, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think about that similarly all the time, where I'm like, I don't know, everybody around me doesn't have any money, and I don't have any money, but at least I don't have any money, and I'm getting to do this. So like, I guess I could go do something else, but they kind of have as little as money as I do, and they hate it. Like, you know, so yeah, I might as well do something that I enjoy and be broke. But also, like, I was thinking about, I had a really awkward conversation when I left PAX last year. My Uber driver was kind of like a weirdo, like Trump supporter, and we were just talking. We got into talking about I don't know, the thing where every generation below you like needs to suffer the way you did, and every generation below you is just like lazy, which is a thing that has happened for every generation in perpetuity, forever and always. That is the sentiment of older generations. But like, don't we want people to not want to work? That's why we make improvements to things, right? Like, that's why we built. That's why we make beds more comfortable. That's why we make, you know, food easier to make, and down the line, that's why improvements in technology and the world ideally exist. You know, obviously there's a profit incentive largely, but idealistically, the point would be to make life more comfortable. So people shouldn't want to work because life is so comfortable that they don't necessarily need to. And that was not, he did not agree. He was like, no, people need to work just by default of being alive. I'm like, well, okay.
He's in good company with the current power structure. So
yeah.
Yeah,
All right,
there's
buddy.
a long history, and this is explored, and it's very funny. I've seen some good threads that historians have done. Y'all have probably seen back on Twitter before it was the X the Everything app of, you know, like things were better the previous generation, or kids these days, right? Kids used to learn the hard way, and now they don't. And every single generation has always professed that, and has always claimed like, no, this time it's real though.
Yeah.
And it's almost like one of those things about life that you just can't convince people otherwise, like that they are just doing the same thing their parents did, and that their grandparents, you know, and like every generation will have that moment of like, man, I've had to work hard, and I don't see these kids working as hard. Like I don't see them being traumatized the way I was specifically traumatized. So
yeah, like,
yeah.
isn't that
why
good?
Why can't we perpetuate our traumas onto the next generation? That's how it's been for centuries. Why not just keep going?
Like, specifically the guy I was in the car with, I'm not going to put his whole, you know, world out there, but like, he was telling me his past, and I'm like, dude, that's terrible. I'm sorry, but why do you want your son to like go through the world? He's like, my son doesn't want to box, and I'm like, it sounds like you ruined your life boxing. I wouldn't want to box either if I was your son. And like, it was just this disconnect, this like stop that I think happens with a lot of like, I don't know, conservatives, but specifically people that are like Trump supporters, where they just like hit a wall, where they don't make the connection of like, this thing is bad, I should not believe in this thing. I'm like, I can't help you past a certain point.
And it's really, I mean, I think about this, like I had a pretty, I wouldn't say like a cush upbringing, but I had a pretty solid middle class like upbringing up until my like folks' divorce. And it's like, my mother was a practicing artist, and the amount of discouragement I got from my family about becoming an artist, because it was like they were terrified I wouldn't be able to like make a living. And it was always just like, like if you like, they, you know, took me to art, and they loved art, and like increased like this appreciation of art in me, like a lifelong love. But it's like, it came time like, I'm gonna do this, and everyone was like, don't do it. So honestly, like, I'm doing it just out of just like cussed spite. Like, I don't it's a good thing I actually like it outside of my need to like get revenge. But that was a really strong factor in me continuing it. It's just like, I've just got this dog in me, and I'm not going to stop. I tried stopping. I genuinely did, and multiple times. I've done other careers, and it's always just been like, well, I guess this is my fate. That's what I'm going to be doing. So there it is. But just like the terror in like my normal ass like family and relations at the prospect of doing stuff, and the question on everybody's mind is sort of like, well, how are you, like, how much are you making, how are you doing? I'm like, you don't get to ask me those questions. Like, it's Thanksgiving. What the hell's wrong with you? Like,
Yeah.
This is inappropriate.
Well, it's I think it'd be different if they support, like, if they were asking you from a place of like, you know, let's creatively explore this and
Right.
like, be curious.
Like, what's
But I
the
think
plan?
usually they
Let's
prejudge,
make a plan for you.
and they're thinking like, what bourgeois occupation could you do instead, or how can I rationalize this into the kind of boxes? This is the idea of the order of things. You know, words and things like have to be in the great table. You know, capital T of society. And so it's like, how do I put what you're doing in a way that relates it to being a manager of a Starbucks, or starting as an analyst at a bank, you know, or whatever it is, like, right, like whatever, being an RN, like the thing that to them, they're like, okay, I can see it in terms of X. So either that's about money, and okay, you make a little bit less or a little more or whatever, or the hours you work or something like that. But it's hard if you have a vocation and you view it differently through this kind of more, you know, this is a passion, it's a calling, like you're just kind of judging it in different ways. And I think that is one of the frustrations beyond, like, because I don't mind talking about money personally. I'm always like, yeah, Americans should talk more about money. But it's like what I feel like is sometimes, even when someone is on your side and you are talking in a very crude way about dollars, and, you know, it's like they can still totally misunderstand the point in a way, you know, and they sort of see it as like, okay, you're trying to like start a toy shop, and I'm like, no, I'm not trying, like, I don't know, like I want to like tell weird stories about the future and like critique, you know, do political education through games. It's like, how do I do that? Like, I'm trying, you know, the money is incidental to that mission, right? It's like, it's more like almost like a, you know, it's closer to something like you know, the kind of religious impulse, right? Like you see the world to come and you're trying to instantiate it, and it's a lot less like that kind of managerial, like, let me get one title bump at a job, you know?
Yeah. The Sometimes Kingdom, due out in 2026. Like, this notion of exploitation of vocation and lack of understanding and necessity of using words and a system that is unable to change is, I guess, I hadn't really thought about it until this conversation. I'm like, I think I've got an axe to grind in there beyond like larger, you know, metaphorical concerns for making a good game and story.
Well, yeah, and also that with Sometimes Kingdom, like, what is an adventure? I think that's one of the things that's drawn me to it when we've talked about, oh, how is this different from like a D&D, like other high fantasy? And I think one of the ways to me that it seems very different is in D&D, it's sort of like in the tradition of the Picaresque generally, but without in the tradition of the Picaresque pulp, like Conan the Barbarian, being an adventurer is just a job you do. You're like, you wake up one day and you're like, I don't want a normal job. I'm not going to be a farmer or a bank manager. I'm going to be a barbarian. And like in the actual Picaresque, like if you think back to Quixote, like the point is he's making fun of people who had, right? If you're like, oh, I'm going to leave the bourgeois world and be a knight, everyone you meet is like, this guy's an idiot. This guy's off his rocker and dangerous. And like that is completely lost by the time you get to like pulp. And even you could say like Star Wars, you know, it's kind of like, yeah, it's cool to like run around and break shit and have magic swords. And I think it's very different to have games that presuppose that like, if you actually did that in a society, people would look at you like you're crazy, you know? And that adventuring, so it's like in Stillfleet, it's like you have to work for the company, and if you don't, people look like you're crazy. SK is a little different because it's almost like everyone is doing that as a job and takes it seriously as a job, and they hate it because they want to be doing something else, right? They want to be playing violin or whatever. So it's funny to kind of invert it and be like, yeah, okay, we're all running around being Quixote, and if you do anything else in a way, like, you know, I don't know that that's completely settled in like how it plays out, but I think there's something there to kind of mock the kind of D&D impulse.
Yeah,
like, adventure is just another job.
The idea is sort of, and I think it needs to, like, at least, you know, I'm gonna make a note of it and put it probably in the zine to start with, is that, you know, magical society, because it's trying to take high fantasy to its natural, like, I wouldn't say conclusion, but like one of the possible extremes, which is like, well, if everything is like this and they keep trying to keep society being normal, like the way that it's been before, when people can, like, you know, if there's an office that's dedicated to like moving the moon back in place because like stupid adventurers keep stupid moving it, like, and then they're still being like, wait, we've got money, we've got to grow food, like we've got to trade with each other, we've got to have jobs. That is a humongous tension between different forces. And so, like, I think what needs to be sort of really telegraphed is like slowly the questing network, which was like the, in quotes, nonprofit that's sort of like sending adventurers who just basically have to like, they're trying to make a small amount of money, or they're trying to like, dot an I or a T on their vocational practice to get their like license to, be an adjunct or whatever. The Questing Network is slowly consuming life in Seasons Cube. Like more and more people have to do it, and they keep encouraging more and more people to do it. And so it winds up being this thing of like, is that sustainable? Is this just going to start changing society completely? When, like, to your point, exactly, yeah, oh man, we're all doing this, or like we're all being encouraged to do it, and it's not great. And sometimes it's awesome, or like maybe we're genuinely bonkers and we really want to be adventurers, but like when it starts consuming society in the endeavor, like what does that look like, and like how does that change like society, and like what are the tensions there?
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting thing that in terms of how to draw that and how to make it look visually different from D&D beyond just okay, it's a different style. We'll have to think through, we've always talked about the level of fantasy, and it's so ultra fantastic, and everyone's becoming an adventurer, and it's kind of the whole rules of magic. It's all kind of sinking into itself or imploding or breaking, which a lot of good fantasy does explore. The way magic changes over time, it's baked into Loader. It's certainly in books like The Witcher, but I think it'll be fun to kind of play with that and their rules changing. And it does remind me again, reading about this medieval stuff, which I know, Ethan, you're trained in and know more about. I mean, I never really spent that much time reading about medieval Europe until the summer, but it is funny that you can get these rules around. I was reading about the rules for clothing. I have this other big book of clothing in medieval France and Netherlands, and it's like very specific rules for life that we have our own rules that we don't see or talk about necessarily, but we don't have, like, I can kind of go into work with any t-shirt and nobody cares, but you could not necessarily do that in Paris in 1390 or whatever. So it's interesting to think about kind of aspects of fantasy, again, like aspects of kind of medieval coded fantasy that you don't see, and like how to fuck with them in art. So it's an interesting conversation to sort of both talk about and then see you draw it out as you do draw more. I will say we're wrapping up this stream, so the two of y'all want to say a little more about what you have achieved or what you would want to do next, or like maybe zoom out, because I think there's more. I don't know, it looks like there's more room below, but it also looks like you're running out of space.
Yeah.
So maybe a good time to kind of move toward winding it down.
I will say, Tony, thank you for mentioning this program. This has been a super fun exercise, I think. On my end, it's been a very good, flatting and sort of light specular, or sort of like, light detailing work speedily, like over flatting it. It really reminds me of like I don't know, this is definitely something like an adult Nickelodeon kind of thing that you might have seen like in the late 90s or the early 2000s.
Yeah, no, I had a good time with it. It feels, it's like fun to use, and that you're getting to like draw with somebody else. So in that way, it definitely feels like collaborative and kind of spontaneous. I didn't come with a whole lot of plans. I wanted to do some NPCs for a Blister Critters project, but I had a more fun time just kind of free doodling and sketching over Ethan's stuff and trying to cram in as much as possible.
Yeah, if there's export and download on this, I'm sure we'll be able to like, it might be fun to like download this, like section them out, and then sort of like see what can be made of it for funsies.
And we said we're all going to get this tattooed on us, right? No matter what.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
I'm thinking like a thigh, like if I could just get it on my inner front thigh. So if I wear anything like besides a pair of short, like,
Mine's going across.
You'll be able to see it. You'll be able to see it all summer.
It's a budgie smuggler tat. It's a reward for coming to meet us on Coney Island. All right, guys. Well, I think we should leave it there. Unless any final thoughts, any advice, reflections on Magma, any things you want to say before we close it out.
I would say that definitely try and spend the time to like explore with tools that you find interesting, but don't let people say boo about your workflow if it winds up getting the job done and it doesn't steal work from other people.
I concur.
Great. Well, of course, follow Ethan and Tony on the Gram and other places. Ethan, usually you're at Spectral House on the internet.
Usually at Spectral House. I can be found at Spectral House wherever fine internets are sold.
Cool. And Tony is Odd Gob Games, or Odd Gob Grasso, usually pretty easy to find if you look up Odd and Gob, G-O-B. And we are Stillfleet. You can find all our stuff. You can find Tony and Ethan at Stillfleet. So thanks for tuning in or watching this later. And let us know in the future. Feel free to ping us, join the Discord, tell us what you want to see. We'll probably keep doing live drawing live streams. We have plenty to draw. And I think this is very cool. I think this would be fun to post also, y'all, in the Discord. And just
Totally.
like, hey, we did a thing. But I think we're going to leave it there. So I'm going to click end stream. And thanks again, everyone who's checked out our work. Thanks,
Later.
Tony. Thanks, Ethan. Bye, y'all.